Yeah, no one's more dangerous than when they're underestimated, right? And that's basically what happened with Bunny in this tournament. And then he showed up. He's been clapping fools left and right. Can't ask for much more than that if you are a fan of this Korean Terran, because he's had some good back and forths. You know, when I think about Bunny, I think about my mind always goes back just because of how involved we all were with like the War Chest Team League last year, and him having some very close matches against guys like Hero Marine, but not being able to come out on top. So clearly he's been working on his game a tremendous amount in the last 6 months, and here he is looking strong. And TVT is such a spoopy matchup, right? Like it's a matchup, things go bump in the night. You don't know what the other guy is doing. There are so many different options available at all times, especially in the first 10 minutes of TVT, that really anything goes, and you have to be ready for anything.
That's why playing it is not very fun, but watching it's totally fine.
Yeah, I much prefer to be on this side of the TVT.
Yeah, the feeling of losing a game because you lost your first Reaper is just it's not fun, but it basically never happens. You know,
when you think your Reaper attacked first, but then the random attack delay actually slows your Reaper down, even though it did shoot first, and the other Reaper speeds up because of the random attack delay, and then your Reaper dies because of that, and you're like, oh yeah, now the game is just over. Nice.
Yeah. You know, my problem with TVT is that, well, there's many problems. It's just a frustrating matchup to play, but is that like the Raven is this weirdly obnoxious unit to micro, which we actually got to see a little bit. You know, we see it actually occasionally in professional games. What happens when the Ravens are a little late to slapping down auto turrets is usually just because they are more awkward than you'd think. They have like a cast range of like literally 1, right?
Yes.
On the auto turret. So
it sucks. It's really short range.
And their acceleration and deceleration are just so like awkward as well that it creates a very awkward opportunity. You really have to actually practice with the Raven.
It was that underwater map. It was the underwater map, right? Like a year or two ago. Was it? Well, I can't. What was it? Oh man, I have this map burned vividly in my head. It was the last good underwater map that we had. But Special played a TVZ against someone, and I think he got like 100 drone kills with a Raven behind each base. And they were like, all right, yeah, F that. We're okay, you have to get within 1 range to cast it now, because this is actually just getting ridiculous with like how easy it was to harass with the Raven. So now it's become one of the hardest interactions to control, because it's so you have to basically be on top of wherever you want to drop an auto turret to do it. And we have the first aggression coming over. 2 Reapers, 2 Hellions. If you play TVT, you know what this means, and that's why it's annoying, because you have everything there immediately for it. And if their units are able to get on top of that Cyclone, if it's isolated, that can also be picked off. Just getting a Cyclone does not bring an end to the madness that can be hit. But even this little bit of damage, Jess, as insignificant as it may seem, that refinery on the natural is going way earlier than the one is for Bunny. And TVT is all about gas. That siege tank that Bunny wants to start would have already been started had that Vespine geyser finished and he'd been able to start mining it earlier. And instead, he finds himself just slowed down a smidge thus far.
The cliche that Terrans don't really utilize gas is somewhat true in the mid game, in the late game, but definitely not true in the early game. Very tech heavy, very 1-1-1 oriented. We do have a little bit of a scuffle as Clem actually tries to chase down the Reaper specifically, lets the Cyclone lock onto it, and that's actually going to be a dead Cyclone. Well microed there from Clem. I mean, you just knew he had an opportunity, so there really wasn't much of a different option, but still good decision making. Now going to try and capitalize on it. Just go across the map with everything he's got.
Yeah, no reason not to. You might take a pot shot from the tank, but run the Reaper or the Hellion up front. Those are the least useful units. Those are the ones you can afford to lose the most. And honestly, with 4 Marines here, there's a possibility you could try to drop like the turret on the tank or something, but instead just going to go behind the mineral line, which is also fine. These are the types of things though that I would say are actually very high risk, even if it doesn't seem obvious, because that Raven energy is one of the most valuable resources. Like, you may as well have a 3rd tab next to your minerals and gas in early game TVT. That's like your cumulative Raven energy, because those auto turrets and those interference matrices are absolutely crucial at making early pushes, but also holding them early on. So when you see that Raven energy get tossed out, and then later on it's like 6 auto turrets to 3, don't come crying.
Yeah, that's a scary thing to consider. especially if you're going to go into not just 2 Ravens, but 3, which is what Clem is doing here. So Bunny, moving on to Vikings and Stim already. It's going to have leads in that regard, but there really is no denying the power of a couple of additional auto turrets or taking out 1 or even 2 tanks more than your opponent could.
They try to do some fancy footwork on that siege tank, and even better counter micro there from Bunny to not lose it. I think that's one of the reasons why, if you like Cyclones, they're not bad per se. In a straight up fight, they're completely worthless, right? They're gonna die. But like the Roomba that they basically designed after, they're great at cleaning things up in the middle of the map. So if you get that opportunity to kind of kite and pull the enemy towards you, then that's where you can really generate value. Like if you, there you go. Oh, that's amazing. You got a Raven for a Cyclone. I would have been fine if you lost both Cyclones for 1 Raven. That really is how much of a value difference there is there in terms of which unit is most important at this stage of the game.
Yeah, that's definitely what Clem wanted. Well played, and he still has his 3 Ravens gathering energies posturing. Bunny actually moves out as well, but I'm not sure he's actually...
Oh boy.
I mean, okay, apparently it's going to be a bit of a base race. I thought maybe he was just kind of trying to like see where the army was and try and pop some interference matches where it really mattered, right? Trying to get ahead of the attack, but he's actually just going for his own attack at the same time that Clem is. And this was a lot of Bunny's TVTs against Innovation, and so he's very familiar with this, but that lacking Raven count could be a concern. However, the Marines with Stim coming in here, not actually jumping on top of that tank, though, are going to be actually blasted away on the ramp, but the interference matrix takes that out. Meanwhile, on the other side, Bunny is having to abandon ship on his 3rd base and his natural. His own tank also getting matrix right there. The Vikings will pop to try and help out, but who has the better high ground?
I mean, getting these tanks on the ramp, I think right now is when you want to siege if you can, because you're in range of the production of the enemy. Clem has his own tanks at home that are sieged. He's got the vision to land those shots on the tanks at the low ground. He actually wins that trade, so his tanks in his main are still alive, and he's camping the enemy production. And you know what? All the things we say about the win condition against Terran, get on the production, it does apply in TVT as well. If those Vikings that are being built out of the Bunny starport die immediately, or the starport dies, that's it. The air control is gone. Your worst case scenario, or your best case scenario, becomes a draw in this situation if you don't have anything that can deal with both players lifting all of their buildings up. Those are some really crucial tech structures that have been eliminated early on here.
Yeah, you know, even though Bunny got an interference matrix, I think he got 2 actually on one of those tanks in the high ground. He couldn't actually kill it, so that actually took away all of his Marines. I thought that might be the biggest difference, but Bunny still has a decent army, so I'm going to pull the SCVs into his own base, into his own natural. Nope, not even going to continue on down there. Just trying to save his production and acknowledging that he can't break out of this position. But I think that's all right, because he does need to set up his production. Clem's production gets a little camped, but it just wasn't as much as Bunny's was.
Killing supply depots is pretty big too. I like that the side effect of getting pushed back to that natural means he's got like 4 or 5 depots over there with a floating command center in the natural. So if Clem can pick this off, that would be huge. He shouldn't be able to get this command center at this point, but I don't see SCVs being pulled for it yet. Okay, there we go. There we go. So it should be able to save this.
Yeah, a little too close. Speaking of command centers, Clem did lose one of his, so we do have a much better economic situation for Bunny. You know, that plus he has more SCVs, he's had more SCVs. So if he could get that mining again, he will be able to utilize his production. Gonna lose 2 tanks. There we go. Has to refocus the auto turrets. Gonna lose, yep, both tanks.
Oh, he lost
the Viking as well.
Wow, that's so Raven.
Yeah, Ravens are pretty good in this situation. They're so low, too. If Bunny had been able to save a couple more Vikings than he had, this could be a very different story. It seems like the high ground won't quite be broken, surprisingly. I don't actually see anything from Bunny defending. So
no, there's nothing there. There's nothing there.
But trying to play
Marines,
nice and safe.
Just like a couple Marines, and the auto turret kills half of them.
I think he just is worried that, you know, if he pushes up with on-siege tanks and like 3 injured Marines and no energy, and a tank and 5 Marines pop out, okay, then you've probably made a mistake. So he's playing very, very safe, and also trying to, I think, calm this down a little bit, you know, not trying and be in a hurry since we're kind of past that point, and it's more about making these smart decisions. So Clem, I think, is making the... I mean, he's had the better situation. He's actually been able to get that army supply lead, and the economic situation is not as important anymore. But the Viking control does go in favor of Bunny. He's going to try and take this out. Little does he know there is an army on the left side. That could be a problem.
Yeah, comes in, flanks his surrounds. He did have a spotting Marine on the outside, but at some point, it does just kind of become a numbers game. This is the siege tank, though, for Bunny in the natural. These Marines sprinting forward with that combat shieldless stim, realizing, hey, if we kill this, there is really nothing else holding the defense together for the Korean Terran, and he is correct. SCV's getting pulled. Raven trying to drop an auto turret, but not able to get it to there in time. Needs to make sure that the siege tanks don't shoot the SCVs on top of his Marines, but they kind of do, and all the Marines for Clem actually end up getting cleaned up. And Zombie Grub, with this siege tank going down, I mean, I think the most important thing right now in this whole entire game is that there are 3 orbitals for Bunny and only 2 for Clem. So with all things kind of being squared off, actually, you know what else? I forgot to mention this, but Bunny somehow got 1-1 during all of this.
Yeah.
So he actually got he's got double upgrade advantage over Clem. Yeah, I think he's got this in the bag, right? He's very comfortably ahead, in my opinion.
I mean, I thought he was dead to that number of Marines, honestly. But now that we see that he's held, I mean, yes, at a great cost to SCVs, but he had SCVs to spare. With the workers being even, but an extra mule for Bunny, with the armor supply not even being ahead for Bunny, of course he's in the lead. He's got upgrades as well. He is missing combat shields, which I think if you could choose which one to get, you would have gotten combat shields, but his tech labs were constantly under fire. So that's something that Clem will have, I suppose, as he starts his, and maybe Bunny. Okay, he does remember it. So it's actually not going to be a difference. Clem is just behind.
Yeah, so combat shield starts up for both players, but Clem needs to find a way to get control of this game, because Bunny's in the driver's seat, and possibly one of the more important things too, not only did he keep that 3rd command center alive, but Zombie Grub, he's had it mining on that kind of awkward spot. This is not really a base that you see people get the chance to take very often. The one that's like to the left of Bunny's main, but this also kept him from mining out his main faster and saves that natural resource as well, because he's able to spread those SCVs even wider. So in a siege situation, one of the things that usually can happen is you end up mining out your main and then you just lose because you're like, oh, I have no money because this 2-base attack put both of us on 1 base and I couldn't get a command center outside. So being able to do that was also a huge play. This Marine for Clem is on the hunt, but he ain't gonna find anything.
Oh, that's very unfortunate. He's scouting for, where the 3rd would be, and there are 3 orbitals. He checks the 3rd, but it was a hidden base much earlier on, or sort of hidden, but hidden well enough. Liberator tried to do some damage and was saved, so even though it didn't get much done, still good to have. And Bunny should be feeling very confident about this game. It's always hard to say that because they don't, have the full lay of the land like we do, but I do believe that Bunny knows he killed one of the command centers, and that he's, very happy that he's had mining. He has upgrades as well. I'm sure he clicked on Clem's Marines, so I think he is feeling pretty confident about this.
So 2 medevacs are going to go inside of the main, and this is where those opportunities can come up for Clem. If these medevacs go in and he's not looking, or he tries to shift queue them right while he's moving at different sort of forces around. But Bunny playing this one smart. I think he recognizes that he is the one who would be throwing if someone was going to throw in this situation. So no need to force the drop. Just try to build on that lead. I think the biggest thing he could do is get an armory, which he is doing. It's about halfway done. If you capitalize on an upgrade lead like this, basically impossible. Like in some other types of units, you can have like smaller margins of victory when you have an upgrade lead. But when it comes to Marines versus Marines, if 20 Marines with 1-1 fight 20 Marines without it, like you win with like 15 Marines left over. It's disgusting. So you absolutely cannot take a fight without your siege tanks being heavily involved if you're Clem. And he's only just now getting that 3rd command center. This is as dire straits as it can really be, because +2 is now on the way for the Korean Terran.
I wonder if he knew that 3rd was been mining the entire time, if he actually just would have chosen the 2-base all in. But since he's like, I guess we're just not mining from our 3rds, then it's okay if I try to macro this one out, which is not correct.
Yeah, he might falsely believe, as you were alluding to, that he's actually on similar footing to his opponent, but he is not even close. The 3 SCV production alone has put Bunny up now. They were both tied at 19, and it's now 35-53. So Bunny's got that cash money flowing in. He's cresting over 140 supply. Clem clawing his way up to 100. But this could happen.
Okay. That's the nice thing for Clem, but the bad thing is that it's contained on 2 bases. I'm going to be able to get his 3rd over there, and that drop will still threaten him whenever he's desperately trying to move all of his army together to barely hold. A drop could ruin his day. He sees what looks like a third being planted with an SCV, but is not true. I hope once again they will not bypass each other tonight. They will not indeed. Clem's actually forced to retreat, realizing, oh shit, that's the entire army.
Yeah.
I need to finish up on that high ground. And he is going to be able to do so, but it is a temporary feat, man. He's going to be, okay, yeah, he's going to be dropped in the main. I don't know if that's actually the right call, though. Bunny, yeah, like, you know what? Never mind. It's okay. I'll live.
Well, he's sieging the production in a way through this. He can't quite reach the actual structures themselves, but if he's able to even get rid of a tech lab, slow down the tank production, force that thing to lift off and adjust, that's going to have a big impact too. And he elevators another huge chunk of his army up to the north side of that main, and now he is actually starting to siege the crucial add-ons, and is also going to be in range of those barracks. So you can't just sit there and try to trickle out Marines. Clem's going to be forced to attack into a sieging player that not only has more, but he's about to have 2-2 in like 15 seconds. So, yeah, if you're looking up the definition of the word pain, you might find a picture of this game in the dictionary next to it.
It's going to be pretty horrendous. And maybe he was thinking of trying to collapse in on that, which actually would be pretty good if it wasn't for the tanks there that were also supporting. And he can't do anything about that from the high ground, realistically. It just won't happen very well. Actually, Bunny feeling so confident he is going to continue reinforcing this point. I would say a lot of times this is where you're like, okay, another base race could happen. I need to be careful about that. But he's been keeping track. He just sees Clem continuing to wait this out.
Yeah, and this Raven is, I was wondering if he was going to try to do something about the Liberator there with the Raven, but obviously turrets would get insta-gibbed by the 5 siege tanks that Clem has inside of that main. So he's playing this one very carefully, wishing he had probably a couple of Vikings now, but he's like, okay, interference matrix on the tank so that the Marines can kill the Liberator, and the contain continues. At some point, Clem is going to have to deal with this army that's just chilling in his base, and here he goes.
All right, good enough concave on the very, very north, so he doesn't have to get shot by the tanks in the low ground. Just good enough there. And Bunny's going to go ahead and respect that and disengage. But, you know, the entire time, Bunny has just been extending his lead, continuing to mine off of now 4 bases, which Clem might think is a third as he scans it, and then now doubling the army supply. Clem might think he has a chance in this game, but it's a very inaccurate read from him. I'm pretty sure he is any idea of a chance he has, like a 5% chance. And now he knows it's a 0% chance to win as a maxed out Terran army just collapses in. GG.
When you finally get those 3 medevacs of Marines and siege tanks outside of your main base, and then you run smack dab into a wall of 50 freaking Marines and 7 tanks. Yeah, no. And they've got 2 upgrade lead over you. That's... yeah.
It was a crazy game, though, man. And Clem just missing out on a little bit of scouting, I think, really would have chosen differently had he known about it. Like, not even just like the third CC or not. Maybe he does try to macro it out, but at least trying to drop, you know? But he tried to play this patient game, this smart game with incomplete information, and it was not going to go well for him. The only thing that could have happened was Bunny also was misreading the game and tried to, like, kill him for some reason. Thought he was the one that was behind, but that seems very unlikely to be the case. So Bunny just played it nice and safe correctly. So yeah, that happens. Those base races get weird. It's hard to call. They do feel like they're more popular lately in TVT, so people are getting more experienced with them. But even with experience, you just can't take into account when it happens, how many units you have, if your tanks are on your high ground. Like, it's always different.
Yeah. And prioritizing what you kill when you get into like an awkward base trade, will they, won't they situation, that is so important. If he had killed, for example, that burning command center in Bunny's natural before his Marines and tanks got cleaned up, Clem could have, this game would have looked completely different, because when 2 orbitals, you don't have him building 3 SUVs at a time while you're trying to get your third started. We're trying to save up money for that. Like, the economy situation was incredibly well handled by Bunny, because he's like, look, I have 50 SCVs. I can afford to throw away 20 of these as long as I don't lose my natural.
Some good decision making, man. But I kind of alluded to it as it was. Bunny had just been playing some of that type of TVT just a couple of days ago. So he was like a little bit mentally prepared, but that game can sometimes just be like, oh, okay, it happened, let's move on type. And
is it possible? Is it possible to be mentally prepared for TVT?
Well, there is that question, and it has been a sore point for Clem in the past, but he's done great things to improve it, so I don't think he's out of it. I think he knows he can bring it back. He is in the top left for Team Liquid. He's Clem.
I like our techno vibes a little bit of drums. It felt like in the background there. In the bottom right, leading the series 1-0. He is Bunny. And he was hopping all over the place in game number 1. Very ready for everything that Clem tried to throw at him early on. And that's an important skill in TVT, is knowing when to lift up your natural and pull everything back inside the main so that you can limit those losses and try to give yourself an opportunity to get back into the game. You know, don't die on that hill, because TVT is very much so that matchup where, yeah, you can get knocked down to 1 base while your opponent is, you know, on 2 and trying to build their 3rd on location. But if you bust out and keep enough of your army intact, you can march right back across the field and strike again and do all the damage you need to do to punish them for that very play that they made. So that's, when we talk about TVT volatility, that really is what it's all about. It's both players get forced onto 1 base while they have 3 command centers, except one of them loses one of those command centers. And then from that point, everything just completely collapses.
Right. Even another thing that happened that could have really drastically changed the game, made it easier for Bunny, is if he didn't lose that 1 Raven to 2 Cyclones, which doesn't happen too often, and was very close to not happening since he pulled him back about as quickly as you would expect. He still did, so it was 1 against 3 in those base trades where it is so much about the tanks finding a position, you know, having auto turns to bust things down, or 4 interference mages compared to just 2, is supposed to be really big. And that's why Clem was getting a little bit more on top of his opponent's production than Bunny was. But yeah, just ran behind economically. And then I guess what, you know, hindsight now tells us was an all-in. His bust into the main with the Marines with Stim did not work. But you couldn't really, I don't think anyone ever blames Clem for being like, I could probably win here, right? Like, I think we were both thinking it. And then suddenly the SCVs do their job. Tanks friendly fire a little bit, and Bunny has such a secure victory. Unlikely to happen again. I believe this is the first time we're seeing Death Aura since that PVZ didn't have it, which I'm a little surprised by. It's such a standard map, very macro map.
Is this map like, is it like last season's fashion? Is that what happened? They're like, yeah, you know, like Death Aura, it was in, but now it's not really that cool anymore. I don't know. I think this is one of those maps in TVT that like you can play pretty greedy on, right? Like there's very few ways to try and get around somebody other than a big drop type play. So some players like Hero Marine was talking about earlier will play very safe, fast 3rd CC and just kind of crawl out to that 3 base, and then once you're set up there, that's when the game really starts on Death Aura. But there's still a little bit of shenanigans that can happen. Sometimes people build a 3rd command center very close to that cliff in their main, and then the Reaper jumps up, Cyclone kills the SCV. You're like, oh my god, is my 3rd going to get canceled this early? So you still need to be aware of a lot of things like that, because this map layout has a couple of tricks up its sleeve. But for the most part, yeah, this is like the ultimate standard macro game map right now, huh?
Absolutely. It's the largest map in the map pool, and is a very safe defensive setup on 4 bases if we were to get there. But a good Cyclone lock on once again favoring Clem, just like last game.
Mopped him up. Absolutely great pickups there. But there's the 3rd command center starting for Bunny, and both players getting the Raven. So I wonder now if Clem is going to go for his multiple Raven option. No, straight into the reactored. I'm going to assume he's going to go straight into Vikings here and try to use that early pickup to say, okay, I could probably hold a collapse if you tried to jump on me early, if he wants to do like a 2 base push while he's building the 3rd. Or he might just be getting Vikings so that he doesn't have to worry about getting sieged if he wants to take his 3rd early.
Yeah, exactly. It's kind of like, if you're getting to this point, it is a lot about what is that starport specifically doing, because you're expecting a Cyclone into tanks, Marines being built, Stim on the way, since mech is still a rarity, even though we saw Innovation do it earlier today. And it just, you know, it's about how many Ravens, how does that set up as far as the pacing of a battle, or how many Vikings, and do I want to be overrun by Vikings as well? Now, if you choose the Viking option and they choose the Ravens, like, depends on the micro there, or even if they were to choose the like faster barracks option out of Marines they could have, is quite intimidating as you try to find a position with tank Viking you quite can't. But yeah, in the early game, there's really no denying that tank Viking is pretty king.
Yeah, when we talk about like StarCraft 2 being a game that generally favors aggressive types of players, like it's usually a bit easier to do certain types of aggressive executions than defend them. The tank Viking shenanigans in TVT are like the epitome of that. It is something that is not really like, you don't see people run around with this army composition in the mid game, right? They try to go more medevacs, more Marines, and less on the Vikings, unless like it gets to stalemate, like, you know, a bit later stage. But having these Vikings early on gives you so much control over space and gets the jump on a few of these Marines. Doesn't get the tanks, does almost get one of those Ravens. That would have been a massive pickoff.
Very scary there. I guess, again, there was a possibility that they were both going to bypass each other, but fortunately, Clem took the middle road while Bunny was taking the very far left. So it's a little bit of the jump on Bunny, but Bunny, very fast to respond, pulls back, and should be totally fine on these bases. I mean, he's building Vikings about the same rate as his opponent, and he also killed one in that attack, so that the whole, like, okay, this is going to increase to an even further contain is, I think, unlikely with defender's advantage. We'll see what happens. Clem, just going to siege up, try and take the Viking fight, but even the Ravens could try and help out there if they needed to. Apparently they don't. Clem just loses it.
I was going to say, those Ravens have so much energy, Zombie Grub. Like, this is exactly the place that you want to be when you have this sort of setup, because your opponent went for earlier Viking production, but oh my God, okay, one of the Ravens just flies straight over those Marines. Good heads up play by Clem to grab that one, and the other Raven almost died as well, under 50% hit points now. I was about to say, this is exactly what you want when you can stop the player who goes for earlier Vikings, and you have more Ravens. As soon as they try to retreat, you just slam those auto turrets down behind them. But Clem, just very good Marine control, and that's why getting that stim up and running, even though you don't have medevacs, getting stim ready while you're making that move out is incredibly important, because it gives you exactly that, the ability to go boop, pick off the Raven, and then suddenly Bunny has no chasing capacity on that force headed home.
Mm-hmm. And he also gets just a bit of revenge too. I think we on his camera, after being bopped in the attack, he was kind of like, oh shoot, and then he got that, and I think he actually felt pretty happy about it. To get a full Raven is always a good feeling. So the game does continue on. Even without the exchange there, I do feel like it's going to be one of those games that just at a certain point, the first 8 minutes don't matter as much. We're not there yet, but both of them are getting 4 bases. It is Death Aura, which will play into a very defensive setup. So whoever tries to crack the other person might have a very difficult job of doing so. Hell, we might even see someone try and go straight up to starports around, 10 minutes, something insanely fast. If that's the way they think it was going to go. I don't know if you want to bank on that, especially against an aggressive guy like Clem, but it could happen.
It's impossible to predict, because the thing is, like, everybody knows which way it goes if you don't try to be assertive, but because of how slow and stalemating it can get, some players don't care that there's a massive risk in loading up their whole armies and medevacs and just freaking send it, which can work. Like in TVT, if you drop 6 tanks and 20 Marines out of 10 medevacs into somebody's barracks, the game is most likely over, unless they're already in the process of doing the exact same thing to you, right? Because coming in to defend that is so hard, and if you're trying to get aggressive after that, well, then you have time to get turtly on one base, because that's all you're going to need when you kill the enemy's production. And that's what makes TVT so stressful too, because not only do you want to move into more factories to get those tanks, but you need to be ready that once you have enough of a ground presence, your opponent is probably trying to switch into Liberators or something.
Trying to gain control of the game and then trying and be able to dictate that pace is really important. And that's what Clem's going to be able to do here. Moving out first, moving out strong. It's going to have actually an advantage of the concave, but the tanks do siege up. It's kind of, just good enough to help that planetary actually settle down on location, so they both will be getting their fourth at the same time. Bunny was behind on 2-2 and is still behind, actually drastically so, as he's missing armor. And then he also was a bit behind on that second factory, but chasing after this, and the Vikings almost taking down the medevac with 2 tanks, and it would have been spectacular. Bunny actually feeling, I guess, equally confident now that Clem is retreating. Their armies are very similar. The Raven could be the big difference maker for either one of them. Yeah, I think you don't engage now as Bunny.
No, you don't engage if your Marines get Dorito Cannon, because now you're at negative 2-2 upgrades, basically, is how we would describe this. So you don't want to fight with your Marines like that. against normal Marines on the other side. That air presence from Bunny is still nice, though. I was kind of hoping to see him try to like bully forward a little bit with that, but I guess there's still too many Vikings in Clem's army that he's not comfortable with the idea of trying to trade with that, because he's only got 6 to Clem's 5, and one of Clem's 5 is a bit weak. But that air control is a huge deal, because I think one of them were building. Yeah, we did have Liberators from Clem, and he actually sent them to backstab during this. So he's going to get quite a few SCV kills on the tail end of this.
5. Not going to be able to save any of them, but yeah, just 5 SCVs, completely pulls back the army. He's able to see the army was completely pulled back, breaks down the rocks, and could get some presence in the middle of the map. Now, it's difficult. There's all these base races, all these doom drop potentials, so you don't ever want to just be stuck in the middle of a map anywhere, but mobility going a little bit more for Clem, who, I mean, is not actually focusing on the trades. He went into the additional starports faster than Bunny did, which I would have guessed the other way around, actually, with how Clem can be aggressive, but not just additional starports. He's already been building additional command centers, again, still faster on the upgrades, and is now completing his barracks production, which is what Bunny, I guess, has a bit favorably for him. 8 racks compared to 5. Really important if they actually start to trade. Otherwise, you know, from here on out, as they recognize, hey, we're both going to starports, the trades will be more so, I think, focused around losing supply to replace with Ravens, right? Those types of trades.
Yeah. To talk about army compositions, by the way, 63 Marines to 62. 11 tanks to 12 tanks, 62 Marines on both sides now, and that one Raven with a handful of Vikings. These guys know what they would like to have in this matchup, and it's very similar, but now is where we talk about those stalemate situations. Once you're able to get planetaries out there, you've got tanks spread out, you're getting all those, you're having extra gas now because your Marines are fully upgraded. That's when you got to think a little bit more about that air plague, bringing in those Ravens, but we're going to have a big army jump, throws the Dorito cannon onto the siege tank, but oh, a bit of Bunny's army gets choked up on that bridge. Is it going to cost him this fight, however? Looks like most of his tanks are going to stay alive on the south side, but everything else gets cleaned up. Kind of most of the Marines for both players died there.
Yeah, which is important because that means there's no, I mean, there's so many tanks anyways, but there's no jumping forward, right? There's no like, okay, I won a good fight, now I'm just going to win the game. They do kind of stalemate out, even though it is favorable for Clem. Bunny had a bigger bank, and like I said, already had all the barracks production with reactors, so he is going to be able to recuperate from that. It was awkward, though. I mean, I understand why Bunny saw an opportunity. You know, your eyes get big, and you're just like, oh my god, a concave, and then, well, you're actually at a really bad choke on your side. So Bunny gets kind of slapped back for that, and will take some damage economically, potentially losing a 5th base. Yeah, the Marines underneath it will go down.
Hey, that's the biggest thing about this map, right? Is the first 3 bases are basically free. The 4th base is about as easy of a 4th as any map will really give you. Past that, welcome to hell. Good luck getting far enough away from where your soft parts are going to be to try and get those expansions, because when you expose that natural net third to those big run by plays, they do sometimes happen. Throws the anti-armor missile into this pack of Marines, but the tanks have already been jumped on by Bunny, and he is, I mean, he lost that expo, but he has been winning the fight. A little scraps here, but this is kind of what I was talking about. As he moves to the west, now to the east goes Clem. Missile turret's going to try and kill these Ravens, but one tank cannot stop 30 supply of Terran Bio from pushing into this 3rd.
Yeah, it really sucks to lose control of his other 5th as well. I think he will have to cancel that or replace his 3rd if he's not careful. The Marines jump on top of it, but just shy. My goodness, just shy of actually taking that command center down. Perhaps, I don't know, a couple more Marines would have been the difference, right? But they do drop into the main base. Bunny's pretty quick to respond. He will clean up the little run-by tank as well. Still going to lose SCVs, mining time. And
well, he slaughtered the defending forces that came in because Clem has 3-3 and Bunny only has 3-2. Like in TVT, it makes a big enough difference. He killed all the Marines that were there and the SCVs, and then the second wave of Marines cleaned up Clem's drop. So there you can really see those upgrades paying off, because he was able to just deal catastrophic amounts of damage. Meanwhile, he's got 83 SCVs back home.
And a lot of extra command centers. Like,
that is way more. That's way more workers than you would typically see in a situation like this with just bio.
Yeah, it's a good point, actually. I don't see too much in the TVT. I mean, PvP's kind of evolved into a point where it does have a lot of like 90 probe situations, so I guess TVT can get there as well. That's a lot of Ravens for Bunny. Try to jump on top of the army. Interference mixes the tanks, and they'll take that out. I mean, both of them did it, but Bunny's Marines were winning at least for the time, they will overall be losing Marine Wars because that +3 armor still is not done. Unless they hit a sick Dorito cannon. One's already on it, but going after the Ravens, almost every single one goes down. Clem pouncing on the opportunity. Everything is orange right now, but Bunny's one with tanks, Clem's one with the concave, and it looks like Clem is going to be able to clean things up, but that's actually not all of Bunny's army. I think he was late to unsieging the tanks that have interference matrix behind this, so now they come forward to try and support, and they will hold this position, but this was a pretty crazy, like, sloppy fight a bit on both sides, and one that is going to end with Clem still able to defend his third base.
Yeah, whichever way this fight ends, it's going to be with an ugly knockout now, Zombie Grub, is how I was looking, because this has just been brutal and visceral back and forth. However, those tanks on the high ground getting blown up, not having the vision to actually counterattack against Bunny on the low ground, and he does finally unsiege, but he's not feeling too bad about it. However, that purple gas base has been taken by Clem. His economy situation is looking very nice. Bunny grabbed the base next to it. So, I mean, well, hey, both players have expanded next to each other now. This can really only end one way, with a very uncomfortable siege.
Yeah, it is true. Fortunately for Clem, he got rid of so many of his opponent's Ravens because his Raven count wasn't looking that hot. Now he might even have the Raven lead since he is still building 3 Ravens at a time. His planetary is, I think, a little off-center, but that's okay. It's still going to, help in a defensive situation. And it is still a bit about the tug of war here. Maybe Bunny's just willing to give up. He's taking a risk by not having his army here right now. He kind of was posturing for a bit of a base trade and then decided to try and respond, but maybe now it's just a worse position. I don't know about this for Bunny.
Yeah, he's trying to get his Marines spread out, but he eats another Dorito cannon right there. But the siege tanks being taken out of play, those are more important in these types of fights. So Clem's Marines are forced to seek shelter at the planetary, but unfortunately for them, there are so many freaking tanks. He's gonna practically one-shot this base. I don't think SCVs can even out-repair this damage. No, he's just gonna completely abandon it, recognizes, okay, this is going nowhere. And Bunny, despite having 20 less workers, well, you can't build as much army when your supply is made up of that many SCVs, Zombie Grub. So he's ahead about 10 army supply at this time, and he wants to dive on top of this army.
Yeah, Clem very quick about picking out those tanks. It's been so important. It's the reason he didn't win that fight in the high ground. Just has less than necessary. Ravens coming in here to try and take out Bunny's tanks and are somewhat successful, but then more importantly, perhaps, Bunny going down that choke against his opponent's tanks. There's still enough of them to utilize that. And we are, again, a bit of a stalemate, but one that Clem is feeling, I think, more and more uncomfortable about because of the tank count. He just lost more tanks than Bunny did, despite both of them being on that double factory production. And Bunny going for the very risky move, picking everything up, but feeling he's safe enough to do so. Just moves over to the right side, and there's not much that Clem can do about that.
I love to see this. He still has a couple of tanks on the high ground as well that have been left behind. I think only one of them sieges up, but still kind of using that position as a pin to hold it all together. Now the SCVs trying to escape should mostly get cleaned up. Gets the sensor tower there, not a cheap replacement. But there was also a backup command center there that he was able to kill at the same time. So Clem feels a little bit desperate. He's going straight back across the map. He's going to just try to counter. He says, screw this. I can't beat this army. This is too many tanks. He's making this advance way too quickly. And now Clem has decided, okay, well, I'm not going to try to charge into the tanks that are up on the cliffs of Bunny's base. He's going to try and get instead a Bunny sandwich.
He's got a lot of Ravens. They are going to be instrumental to this, and good use of them as well. Going to be able to save most of them and take out most of those tanks, and also the what happens when tanks frying up planetary, so they won't actually turn on and fight those Marines. So that was why the last tank didn't even bother trying to take a shot. A good cleanup there from Clem, who, as I noted, saved a lot of his Ravens, which he's no longer just freely replacing because he has so much economy. No, he lost 2 bases. At least he's replaced one, or yeah, he's replacing one as we speak to the left side. And that's actually where Clem's army is going to as well. An orbital going to fall. Hello? Yep.
Oof. Well, that's a good grab again there for Bunny. Man, yeah, talk about a scrappy game. This one has been all over the place on both sides, trying to find a way to grab that base, but there is nothing there yet. So, nothing to kill just yet. But Bunny leaves behind a pretty big chunk of his army with no medevacs. And Clem is trying to make a move on the southwest side. He takes both of those bases on the high ground, and now he's moving towards Bunny's 4th. So he still has more bases than Bunny. This has kind of been how he's been trying to play this out, war of attrition. And those Ravens are going to continue to generate a lot of value. I think he could just slam down turrets in front of these tanks. And he does.
He's going to lose one of his Ravens, not even take out the second tank, it's all just time buying, right? Like 2 tanks isn't much of a defense, but the planetary being there in combination kind of did make it enough that Clem had to just stop and siege, which means that Bunny's able to successfully return home, or somewhat successfully. He's going to try and go for a concave. The planetary's done, so maybe pull the STDs. Once again, Ravens. Oh, man, Bunny has been losing so many of those, but I guess the round is so damn good. Coming in from the north and the east isn't good enough, however, as Clem actually dominates both sides of the fight, perhaps. Right side Marines are going to clean up those tanks. Left side tanks of Clem are actually just shy of killing those. This has been a scrappy fight, the one that leads directly into Clem's favor. So much so that Bunny just taps out of this game. GG.
Yeah, GG, well played. And man, well, story of this game for me, Zombie Grub, is going to be 7 Ravens fly into 20 Marines, and they all die.
Yeah. Not nearly as the close battles as some of the previous times, right? Or we're back and forth. At the end of that fight, it was just like 100 supply difference. A very easy game for Bunny to realize he could not come back from. But the type of TVT we were hoping to see. Back and forth, a little bit of the base trade's been out fully, very long game. This bodes well for the rest of the series. So it's all tied up, guys, 1-1. We're going to head to a break. When we come back, it's game for 3. TVT is all tied up at 1-1. Clem versus Bunny has delivered. We got ourselves a little base race. We had ourselves a long macro game on Death Aura, and both looked, they had their strengths. right? And I think specifically for the weaknesses, Bunny just could not control his Ravens. Could save his tanks, but couldn't save his Ravens.
Yeah, I tell you what, if he had been able to interference matrix all of the siege tanks of Clem, he probably, with that army, considering how close the fight still was, probably could have cleaned it up. And then, I don't know, that game, we'd probably still be casting that game. But instead, we're here in game number 3 with everything tied up. And in the northeast position, as the blue Terran player, we have Bunny.
In the bottom left, as the red Terran, he is Team Liquid's Clem.
Oh yeah,
I mean, Clem?
Oh, sorry.
Did you not make it in, Nate?
Oh yeah, no. I totally. You know what? I was going down a rabbit hole in my mind about the Ravens and what they could have done. I was like, what am I gonna say when we come back? And then I was like, oh, I gotta join the lobby. Oh wait, that's okay. Well, hey, it's better than when my stuff was crashing every other game in the EPT season. That was pretty bad. So at least we don't have that happening anymore.
That is a good thing. Absolutely.
Yeah. Don't use more PCIe lanes than your CPU has, nerds. Okay. I learned a very valuable lesson about games running on those drives.
That is interesting.
Good times. Yeah. Someone would build a building and it would try to read the drive, but because it didn't have enough room, it would just stall, and then there it goes. Oof. Yeah. Only took about 4 months to figure that one out.
You're in that fancy technology, pushing the envelope type of person, where I'm just like, I finally got a bigger SSD.
Hey man, when your life goal is to have your brain downloaded into an AI so that you can live forever on a hard drive in outer space, this is the kind of stuff that I focus on. What can I say? Reaper's gonna come up for Bunny. He's bringing it back. It's got quite a bit of a later factory in this game, which is unusual to see. He's trying to get that bunker up early on, but it's not really ready.
Well, it is it is pistol, right? No, it's oxide, but the maps still share the quality I was going to talk about, which is that natural ramp. So that's why we see, in PvP, some of the faster Nexus builds on these ones, as well as in TVT, you do take a bit of a chance by going for one Rax expand. It's only a bit of a chance because we rarely see them punished so harshly that it's like, hey, you're out of the meta, get out of here. That's kind of like on Submarine, you wouldn't risk it, but yeah, it's fine. And actually, Bunny gonna buy some time here with the Reaper.
Yeah, I was gonna say it was a good bait play with the first one being very low to try and get that kill early on, but then now it just turned into like a bit of a dragged out thing where, like, if he had killed that Reaper hypothetically right in front of the natural, these 2 Marines that Bunny just built were only just starting. So he could have ran past the bunker and tried to kill an SCV or maybe a mule, but instead he gets nothing because running past a bunker with 3 Marines in it will likely result in not all of the units making it. He might try anyway. No.
Just a little poke, seeing what's up there. And it is a completed bunker. So Clem, more importantly, adding on that medevac and that tank. So this is also, I guess, a feature of Oxide. And a couple of maps, actually. But the point is you can get that tank up and close to the supply depot and the barracks and force that to lift off, which also could impact the starport production later on as well, since the reactor is under fire. It can be pretty nasty. I think when it first was developed, people were actually straight up losing games against it, just like, hey, what's happening? But it is a somewhat common build now. Bunny just has to sniff it out and actually be prepared for it.
Yeah, he's going to go down his ramp and try to push the Reapers and the Hellion away. Getting the jump on this is one of the better ways to stop it. But if you miss it, then you're not only out of position, but if he puts the tank like somewhere like you were talking about, he's also going to make it hard to get back inside of the base. But Medevac's going to fly right over that Cyclone. Now, Cyclone won't instantly kill it, but this does start that engagement a little bit sooner, and this is it's one of your better chances at stopping it, but he does not have enough. And, well, things might actually just go from bad to worse here because he can siege this bunker up now and just blow up any SCVs that try to repair it, right?
Yeah, I feel like Bunny shouldn't even really try to repair it. Maybe like a little bit, but I don't think it's really not the biggest of deals. It can become a bigger deal, though. That's why he wants to buy a little bit more time, get that tank siege up, because there could be reinforcements. Just with the way that things have gone, it would not be wrong of Clem to try and continue pushing his momentum, which is exactly what he's trying to do. And this could be nasty. There's not many people who actually follow, but they get directly with the second medevac. So this is Bunny totally unsuspecting. His Raven's out of position. He only has 5 Marines.
Oh my god.
A tank about to pop in the main base.
Yeah, SCVs are getting pulled. I was going to say, it's a third command center building there too, so he's going to give that up if he loses this position. He killed the tank that spawned pretty much instantly, and great Marine spread on the few that were there. Even with the support of a couple of medevacs for healing, these Marines are not going to be able to just wipe out all the workers inside of Bunny's base. So he's just kind of do a little bit of fancy footwork with these guys, but then the next tank comes over and 3 Marines with 2 medevacs. That's not the most dangerous force in StarCraft. So at the end of the day, Clem puts on a nice little bit of pressure, and some of these SCVs are still actually kind of hurt from earlier. So it's not impossible to think that he might get some more kills with a little bit of harass.
I really did think that was going to go a bit worse. You know, when the SCVs were pulled in, so I thought maybe 8 SCVs would have fallen or more. But with only 4, it's actually an even game, even favorable for Bunny. A couple workers ahead. Command center actually very far ahead. So in that regard, he's looking quite good. And a scan on Clem's base will confirm that for Bunny. So he can be a little more apprehensive, doesn't have to worry about trying to get a counter in, not that he's really prepared to do so. And just focus on taking care of these 3 Marines, which, you know, unlikely to do a whole lot, but it is Clem.
Yeah. I mean, this match has been so scrappy and so back and forth already in just the first 2 games, and even this third, I'm already getting that vibe that it's like every little tiniest thing apparently is a pretty big deal. So I won't laugh if it is the 3 Marine hit squad, or if it's the pull back and wait up for another big move out punch type style either. And you know what else? Compared to the first game that Clem won, in game 2, Bunny went for multiple Ravens and he ended up winning. He was the guy that opened up with multiple. In this game, again, it's Bunny opening up with 3 Ravens versus just 1 for Clem. So there's a lot more auto turret capabilities, a lot more Dorito cannon capabilities, and of course, interference matrix if he wants to pressure one of those bases that only has, 1 or 2 tanks covering it. Here we go. Those 3 Marines join 8 from another medevac, and that third base says no can land, sir. You are going to have to settle down for a little bit on this one.
Fortunately for Bunny, though, that's without Stim. If that was with Stim, I mean, that's just terrible. But again, the Ravens being used a little bit late, wanted a lot of energy, not actually getting to slap down any auto turrets, which would have been a big difference. As it is, the tank's still starting to fall here for Clem. He's still losing the air war. Nope, actually he's winning it now. And Bunny is going to have to pull back with whatever is left over. Still got 12 SCVs, however.
Yeah, that's why that's the power of building more than 1 Raven, right? We were talking about it earlier. I was making that joke. He's going to lose this one in the middle of the field. So great catch there by Clem as the Raven counts were neutralized. But what I was saying is like, well, the difference between 5 auto turrets and 1 or 2, right? Because Clem only had that 1 Raven. But at the same time, he had enough of SCVs and everything else left over that he could hold on there. But he does find himself at a minor worker count disadvantage, though, because of it. So let's see what he can make happen as Bunny is trying to retake his own third.
Yeah, Bunny getting a couple of snipes off on the Vikings, give him a temporary lead there, but now it's 3 again for Clem. He's going to be able to push this off again, so that worker count's not as important. I don't think he'll be able to kill it, or at least Bunny really can't let that happen. He will not. It's that tank forward, starting to get enough Marines to actually take this on as well. But it's further denied mining. Clem has kind of caught up in the economy and still has the army lead.
This must be so annoying. Like if you're Bunny right now, it's just, you're like kind of getting like almost soft tilted off of how difficult it has been just to take your third, even though it's like a handful of units by Clem. It's not like he has an equivalent force, but that's TVT. If you've got a tank and a couple Marines covering it, you can do a whole lot. Even against greater numbers, and that's one of the reasons why we talk about how like it's such a skill-based matchup, because even if you get lucky and get a pick off of a medevac or something, it doesn't really change anything. The supply tells a much different story than it does in other matchups where it's a little bit more clear when you have a lead, because like, hey, yeah, having 10 more Marines sounds fantastic, but if the tank's in the right spot, you're not killing it.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Terran's advantage works out pretty well in TVT, and that's what Bunny is having to utilize here, is he's the one constantly under attack. The one attack he did was, I mean, successful enough in exchanging kind of army for SCVs, but overall still puts him in an uncomfortable position. His upgrades are better right now, however, and Clem should be clicking on that and realizing it. It's only, 10 more seconds till his 1-1 is done, and then he could think about engaging. With the tank sieged up, maybe the crawl here could try and go into the main base. Bunny seems to kind of be prepared for that. He's actually kind of preparing a surround. I wonder if he'll pull the trigger.
Yeah, he's got a pretty wide arc on this. Killing 3 tanks early on like this would actually be really nice, assuming he doesn't lose everything in order to make it happen. But Clem's army is going to go over to fight those Marines on the right side, and the tanks do get completely swallowed up. And Zombie Grub, you know, we talk about hitting from the north and the south, but he just hit him with that Xbox 360-degree surround.
Yeah, and the missile turrets in the main base stopped the drop cold, man. He lost the medevac and was barely able to save the one that did have units in it. Bonnie getting some serious revenge, also moving forward, trying to capitalize on the momentum, but a little overeager, needs to wait for his tanks, needs to wait for his medevacs as well, which weren't healing his Marines. Bunny has done a good job holding so far despite being displaced from his usual third. Could save that tank, does save that tank, and again, the main isn't an option here, so Clem just is going to try and save the medevacs. That's all he can do.
Yeah, that's a tough situation to be in because you lose those tanks and now you're worried about the possibility of a counterattack. So it's almost good, even when you don't have as much stuff, to still try to put that pressure forward, because it's 7 tanks to 2 Zombie Grub. And he knows that he's behind in that count, because I saw how fast he's got that second factory already going. I don't know if Bunny also squeezed that one out yet, but he's trying to get the production caught up. Yeah, so it's just 1 factory still for Bunny. So he's trying to catch up with this early second factory, which I don't mind at all. I think 2 factories is a fantastic number for TVT if you can get to that place where, you know, you're comfortably able to actually build out of both of them while still getting your upgrades, because that's a lot of gas.
Clem did have that spike of economy a little bit more than Bunny has, just with all the thirds running around. So yeah, he's able to put that into a tad bit more production. Now, Bunny was very good at keeping his tanks alive on the Death Aura game, and it was the opposite case for his Ravens. So even with 1 factory, he might still be able to utilize them better than Clem. But that is the fear. It's a huge fear, actually, especially when you do take kind of a poor fight and you look back at home and there's 2 tanks instead of 4 preparing the defense. That can mean you just lose. Bunny's going to engage on top of a not quite done planetary, perfectly timed, in fact. The SC's going to try to repair, and they are going to be able to save it with the help of the Marines moving forward as well. That is not going to go down, but it is not going to mine soon.
Yeah, trying to take the rocks to give himself a different position to wedge those siege tanks in on the southeast side. He doesn't need them to be able to reach Clem's army. He just needs them to be able to reach Clem's command center, and then he can kind of bait him into fighting. But good tank positioning by Clem is enough to get rid of the most frontward siege tank. And those Vikings, you don't want him to be able to just drop 2 tanks real quick, right, on that spot with a medevac and just try to catch you off guard. So keeping the air control still really big, because here comes the Liberator.
It's a very calm unsiege of 2 tanks. Another 2 kind of went forward and got a couple of shots, but eventually it will be, okay, well, he's going to go for it. I thought he was going to just run away, takes care of the Liberator, gets a concave on top of the tanks, but the Planetary is done this time around, which is a huge difference. Those Marines could not handle it. Plus the reinforcing Marines of Clem coming in from the left side. The tanks are trying their best to hold, but it's not going to be good enough. Bunny, or maybe just good enough? Barely good enough to let those Marines of Bunny survive. But it still was not a pretty fight for him, as he's also going to lose some of his SCVs.
This counter is pretty dangerous too, because not only does he get a couple of workers, I definitely think he wanted to get more than just 5 here with when there was nothing here to defend. But I was going to say that command center was also very low on hit points too, so Bunny needed to react quickly to save that base, his third, right, that he was forced to take as his third. But yeah, Zombie Grub diving into pre-sieged tanks and a planetary when a Liberator is sieged over your tank. That is that's Nate's YOLO move of the day. If we had that highlight section, that would be it. Is Bunny's like, yeah, I don't care, I can run into 5 tanks and a planetary and 20 Marines. Of course, you know, the universe told him no, you can't, and now he's a little bit behind again.
A little bit, yeah. I think he still had a somewhat, okay, army supply, but is now dipping down in that as well. And just hate to go back to it, but not having a second factory is actually just weird at this point. You know, you can forgive it a little bit or say that Clem got a faster one, it's just fair enough. But at this point, just one tank at a time, especially as he just lost a bunch, 6 to 10. And as I was saying, you know, before the engagement even happened, once you lose an engagement, you only have so many tanks left at home. You no longer can cause the stalemate, cause the slow removal of your bases. That one just went down super quickly. Another concave, though, so Bunny's still going to try and use, I guess, the Marine Force that he has, along with the SCVs. They go into the meat grinder of the Marines, try to buy time, but the tanks also got beautiful shots off on Bunny's Marines through that choke. That was not the bust that Bunny was looking for.
On today's episode of Will It Blend, we've got Bunny's whole freaking army versus 10 siege tanks. And yeah, well, you called it out, but that's kind of what I was alluding to earlier, was that when you only have one factory and you lose all your tanks, life gets pretty difficult. Meanwhile, Clem not only has still a decent number of tanks, but even if these guys die, he's got 2 more that are about to finish. That extra production capacity is really being used in the most efficient possible way. He's constantly pumping out those high-tech forces, and it's been paying off. And one of the other things that I think Clem has just been stupidly good at in all the games that I've seen of him, including in this last chance tournament, was he's been eating the map so well. GG. Clem goes up 2 to 1. But yeah, he had all those bases running up behind this. He's not scared to expand very aggressively. And Bunny might have been playing a little too aggressively with his army in some of those situations.
Yeah, just continuing to push the issue on the 4th base, but as the planetary finished, not the right call at the end of the day. I could kind of see his point when the tanks weren't so protected, thinking the Marine output could just kill them fast enough, but there were more Marines for Bunny, for Clem rather, they didn't see, and then the planetary was there, and that was always going to be difficult to crack. So I guess it could have been an actual decision, like I have momentum, I'm going to carry with it, I'm just going to try and shove Marines down your throat, but it just ended up making it look like an awkward TVT, where you're like, well, tanks are still pretty important. You know that. You were using them quite well in Death Aura, but you don't want to go for it? All right, let's see how that works. And it didn't work out very well. Had he had it, maybe there's 4 tanks wrecking his planetary, and that engagement, the last engagement, never happens because he doesn't feel the need to cover up the loss of his 4th base.
Yeah, there's so much. I mean, I feel like there's a lot between the Death Aura game where you at least have more open areas, right? So you feel like you can make those big jump plays and big surrounds. But then you're playing on Oxide when you have such little room to work with, right? And then it just kind of becomes this whole, well, where do you actually try to get that spread? It's choke points, the map. And that's what we saw, was units getting obliterated in choke points the entire time.
Yeah. I mean, the only other map that can contest with choke points the map is Submarine, actually, which is what we're going to be getting into. So very short and a lot of chokes, a lot of brush as well to kind of lose track of an army. I mean, we had the base race for the first game, but I wouldn't be surprised if we end on a base race should Clem win this map, as Bunny is on his last life. It was a great story for him in the group stage, but Clem's story, I guess, maybe a bit stronger. Continued performance of the non-Korean Terran. I don't know, it's such a beautiful thing. I think you're with me, right? Just the fact that Korean Terrans dominated for so long, and now we get to be like, oh, a Terran in the finals of other tournaments. Huzzah! Yeah. Could have it again.
It's a miracle. That's the real miracle of life, Zombie Grub, is seeing things that we convince ourselves are impossible. And that to me is the greatest experience. Having one's eyes open, and someone who's opened their eyes about running into choke points in the top left, the blue Terran player. He is Bunny.
In the bottom right is the red Terran up 2 to 1. He is Team Liquid's Clem. So Clem performing as well as expected when you think of his performance versus TY and how just TY is like the god of TVT to so many people. He occasionally loses it, that's true. And I think he did lose one series to Clem, in fact, a little while ago. But still, If you can go toe-to-toe with that guy, you're going to have some pretty good TVT. Clem still proving it here today against Bunny, who's no slouch in the matchup.
Not at all.
Actually made Innovation look almost desperate in their best of 3, despite it being somewhat back and forth. It just looked like Bunny was having the best StarCraft day of his life. It's really changed here as he's now down a game in his last life against a foreigner. How dare.
Yeah. Well, hey, let's not forget, Clem did take a nap off TY in that winners match of his Group A that he made it out of to get here. And Katz and I were casting those series, and it's very impressive. It's very impressive what Clem is able to do. I mean, not only his accomplishments over the last few months, but just when we watch him in these games. And I love that you bring that up because, it was like, oh, to beat European Zergs, you got to be able, if you want to win in Europe, you got to be able to play ZVZ, right? Because the problem was all the best players were so good, but there were so many really good Zergs that their ZVZ became like stupidly good by playing against each other. And then if anybody else wanted to show up, it's like, well, yeah, you might be able to win, but like these guys have their own brand of ZVZ because they basically hyperbolic time chambered it. And you didn't really have that same level of I guess like a think tank, right? For the Terrans outside of Korea. So their improvements in the TVT matchup, whether it's more towards the new chaotic side of it or whatever excuse you want to make, it's been pretty interesting to follow the development of it because, man, Clem, looking good.
Yeah, that's a very important point that I hadn't really thought of too much on, but just the fact that, of course, it makes sense that Clem's TVZ is his best. Like that, just no one has to think too hard about that one in the region that he's risen up in. But that TVT would be especially hard for him to really perfect, since while there are some other great Terrans in Europe like Hero Marine and New Thermal, not only are they not quite on Clem's skill level when it comes to the other matchups, but they're not Korean TVT.
No.
Which gets to perfect itself over in Korea. So it's definitely very different, very scary usually, but Clem has proven over the past year especially that he is not someone who's going to die to macro mistakes or lack of build orders or lacking mentality. He's going to have to take a defensive fight here, but with the help of the Widow Mine, it is going to be fine. In Submarine, things can really spiral out of control in the early game, but not this time around.
I can't describe actually how impressive I think that little split was when he realized the Widow Mine was going to blow up. Running into the mine, of course, is not something that you ever want to do, but I think the only reason any of these units are alive right now is because of how fast he just scrambled them all there as Clem tries to chase back across the map, but I don't think there's any opportunity really, because just really quick repair and then the Cyclone coming out. Those early little engagements are always so scrappy. But that front Widow Mine can be really valuable because, as any Terran player knows, they do one-shot the Cyclones. So you can eliminate a very expensive piece off the board early on if you put that mine somewhere cheeky. And these Hellions grab a Reaper, so not too shabby at all.
Yeah, Cyclone Lock-On now available for Bunny, not for Clem, but is Bunny going to be able to get it? No, not. I mean, he can try now. Yeah, exactly. He can try now that the Hellion also received the Lock-On, and that Cyclone is dead for Clem. Finally, the starting exchange is going better for Bunny.
Yeah, well, you'd never drop that auto turret in that situation unless you think you need it to keep your Cyclone alive. But not only does he do it, the Cyclone still dies anyway. So, yeah, this is a phenomenal start for Bunny. Just even eating that mine early on just wasn't that big of a deal because the unit that he lost from it wasn't the most expensive, but he's kept his good units alive. He's wasted energy from the opponent's tech unit, and he killed the opponent's Cyclone, which means just a little bit less mobility in map presence that you can have pre-stim with that. This Hellion is nice, however, off of Clem. Going to delay that third by a decent little bit. It's going to take at least 10 seconds for another guy to get over here and start fixing her up. There he is. But if there's one thing that Clem's got going for himself, actually, in that regard, his third command center has been stupid fast, Zombie Grub.
Yeah. I mean, Bunny doesn't know that. I think Bunny was feeling so nice about the opening and just it is far more likely past a certain point for this game to go into 3CC, just the way that TVT goes, that he sets his on location, which he actually needs to do to catch up with Clem's third CC again, unbeknownst to him. And there is certainly one thing about Submarine, the shortness of the map is really obnoxious, the chokes are really obnoxious, and those two things combined makes the tank Viking positioning, if you were to get one, very, very good. You need to stop your opponent from getting to your side of the map, or you are just going to never dislodge their engagement. So that's why Bunny's kind of sitting here in the middle, ready to receive Clem's attack. And in fact, exactly what you want to do on a map like Submarine 2. Siege one of those tanks, try and get a pot shot.
You literally could not have said it any better, Zombie Grub. This map is hell for Marine, Tank, and Viking. Particularly Tank Viking. Just with how little space there is, the mobility of bio is like, it doesn't matter as much. Your tanks are way easier to use and reposition. And there's just so many choke points. It's very hard to dislodge if tanks get sieged up on your base. This is going to be a really awkward situation. The auto turrets are coming out on both sides, but he actually didn't find the room to place all of them. I don't think Bunny could. He goes for the interference matrix instead, but the auto turrets, 150 hit points apiece. Those things will tank a lot of damage, and they keep these siege tanks alive as this transforming third command center has to wait to finish before it can even lift up. If he is going to lift it up. Okay, yeah, there it goes. But that's a fantastic strike back by the Clem.
It's not what Bunny was hoping for. I actually wonder if... Oh, and he loses the tank as well. I actually wonder if his plan was to even bait Clem into the third base and then come from like directly behind, right? Because the way that he moved away from his own third, despite being scanned by Clem, just... I can't explain it any other way. Right? But it really backfired on him as the auto turrets were just superior. And now it's all about the Vikings finally winning the war so that he can take his third CC back. Even if he eventually does, the time lost here is so damn important. Bunny knows that this is not a good game for him. Maybe he's going to try and base race this one. Yeah, that's what he's going to do. Just go across the map.
Well, you never want to be in this situation where you're like, all right, I'm just going to freaking send it while my opponent is scanning me. No. Clem's going to seize the tanks. I always said it's Choke City, Choke City, friend, as there's not really anywhere to go but into the splash zone of these siege tanks. GG's called Clem with the decisive 3